The wooden doors of the county courthouse creaked open as 16-year-old Darius Carter stepped inside. His shoes were scuffed, his hands trembling, but his eyes burned with determination. He was alone, no lawyer, no parent to guide him, just a boy clutching a folder of handwritten notes. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with quiet chatter. At the front sat Judge Rebecca Whitmore, a woman known for her sharp tongue and impatience. She adjusted her glasses, glanced at the docket, and sighed when she saw his name. Case number 1842, Darius Carter versus State of Franklin, the bailiff announced. The boy shuffled forward. Your Honor, Darius began, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. I'm here to represent myself. Laughter rippled through the courtroom. A teenager defending himself. Ridiculous. Judge Whitmore raised a brow. Son, this is no mock trial at school. Do you even know what you're asking? Yes, Your Honor, Darius replied, his tone firm. I understand my right to self-representation under the Sixth Amendment. The room grew still. Whitmore frowned, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. Noted. Proceed. Darius opened his folder, pulling out carefully organized notes. He outlined his defense with precision, citing case law and constitutional rights most adults in the room barely understood. Every sentence dripped with clarity, every argument cut sharper than expected. But Judge Whitmore, firm in her authority, dismissed his opening plea. This court cannot take seriously the ramblings of a child. Her gavel slammed down. Gasps erupted from the gallery, but Darius did not flinch. His eyes stayed locked on hers. Then, Your Honor, he said, voice calm and unwavering, perhaps you should refresh your memory, because the law says otherwise. The room froze. The gallery whispered among themselves as Judge Whitmore leaned back in her chair, clearly unsettled. Few had ever spoken to her so directly, and certainly not a boy half her age. She cleared her throat, glaring down at him. You claim the law is on your side. Explain yourself. Darius adjusted his papers, his voice calm. Your Honor, I am accused of trespassing on city property, but the land in question isn't city property. It's public commons, open to all citizens. That's established in Marbury v. Madison and reaffirmed in Hague v. CIO. I have the documentation here. He handed a neatly folded map to the bailiff, who brought it to the bench. Judge Whitmore unfolded it and frowned. The boy's research was meticulous, highlighted and footnoted. How did you come by this knowledge? She asked, curiosity slipping through her stern demeanor. My mother cleans houses for a lawyer downtown, Darius replied softly. While she worked, I sat in his office reading old case books. He never stopped me, so I kept learning. The crowd murmured in awe. A poor black boy studying law on his own? Judge Whitmore's face hardened, but a small flicker of respect lingered in her eyes. Still, she shook her head. Knowledge of cases doesn't make you an attorney. Court procedure is strict, and you are a child. Darius did not back down. Respectfully, Your Honor, the Constitution doesn't set an age limit on the right to defend yourself. If I can read, research, and argue, then I qualify. You can dismiss me, but you cannot dismiss the law. Her gavel wavered in her hand. For the first time in years, Judge Whitmore felt the foundation of her authority tremble. Judge Whitmore leaned forward, narrowing her eyes at Darius. Young man, are you suggesting that I, she paused, voice sharp as a blade, do not know the law? The room went silent. Court officers exchanged nervous glances. A boy questioning a sitting judge was unheard of. But Darius stood firm, his hands gripping his folder. I'm saying, Your Honor, he replied evenly, that even judges can make mistakes. That's why appeals exist. Gasps swept through the gallery. The statement cut deeper than any insult. Whitmore slammed her gavel down, the sound echoing through the chamber. Order! This is not a debate club. You are standing in my courtroom. Darius took a slow breath, refusing to shrink. And I am standing under the same constitution you swore to uphold. That means this isn't just your courtroom. It belongs to the people. The judge froze, the boy's words piercing the heavy air. Somewhere in the back, an older man whispered, He's right. Whitmore straightened, masking her unease with stern authority. Very well. If you want to act as your own counsel, you will follow the same rules as any licensed attorney. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Then proceed. Show me this grand defense of yours. Darius lifted his notes, voice steady. He began laying out the timeline of events, how the fence around the property had been illegally erected, how city ordinances conflicted with state law, and how precedent supported his right to be there. Each point was backed by citations, spoken with clarity beyond his years. The courtroom buzzed with shock. Even Judge Whitmore felt her composure slipping as she scribbled notes, realizing this boy was no ordinary defendant. For the first time, she was not in control. Darius's voice carried across the courtroom, steady and deliberate. The city ordinance they cite contradicts state law, which clearly states public grounds must remain open for community use. That makes their case invalid. Judge Whitmore's pen hovered over her notepad. She didn't want to admit it, but the boy wasn't fumbling. He was weaving a structured argument. The gallery leaned forward, hanging on every word. "Enough," she said finally, raising her hand. "Do you have evidence to support these claims, or are you just quoting books you don't fully understand?" Without hesitation, Darius pulled out photographs, grainy, printed on cheap paper, but clear enough to show the land before and after the fence was erected. He handed them to the bailiff, who passed them to the bench. "These were taken 2 months ago," Darius explained. "That fence wasn't there until recently, and the city council never voted on it. I checked the minutes of every meeting this year." The judge stiffened. "You went through council records?" "Yes, Your Honor. They're public. Anyone can access them if they care enough to look." A murmur of admiration spread across the courtroom. Even the prosecutor shifted uncomfortably, caught off guard by the boy's thoroughness. Judge Whitmore tapped her gavel lightly, trying to compose herself. "You've certainly done your homework, but knowing the law and practicing it are different things." Darius looked up, his expression calm yet piercing. "Then let me ask you, Your Honor, if I've presented facts, evidence, and precedent, what else is there? Isn't that the essence of practicing law?" The question struck harder than she expected. For the first time in years, Judge Whitmore felt her certainty waver. The boy was not only defending himself, he was challenging the very foundation of her judgment. The prosecutor, a tall man named Mr. Harlan, rose from his seat, clearly irritated. "Your Honor, this is absurd. We cannot let a child turn these proceedings into a mockery. He's parroting words he barely understands." Darius's eyes snapped toward him. "With respect, sir, I understand more than you think. Would you like me to cite Brown v. Board of Education and explain how the court ruled that equal access to public spaces is a fundamental right?" The gallery gasped again. Mr. Harlan's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Judge Whitmore interjected quickly. "Mr. Harlan, sit down. I will decide what is absurd in this courtroom." Her tone was sharp, but inside, a storm brewed. The boy was dismantling arguments that seasoned attorneys often struggled with. Darius pressed on, sensing the momentum shift. "Your Honor, the prosecution claims I trespassed. But trespassing requires proof of intent to unlawfully enter. I entered an area that was, until recently, open to the public. No signs, no council vote, no posted notice. How can intent be proven if the law itself was unclear?" The judge leaned back, her gavel resting loosely in her hand. She couldn't ignore the precision of his words. Even Mr. Harlan's face reddened as he shuffled through his notes, finding no easy rebuttal. "You've done remarkable research," Judge Whitmore admitted reluctantly. "But knowledge doesn't erase responsibility. You could have left when asked." Darius straightened his shoulders. "Respectfully, Your Honor, standing my ground on public land isn't defiance, it's exercising a right. If the law doesn't protect the powerless, then what good is it?" The room went still. Whitmore felt her authority cracking, her certainty dissolving. For the first time, she realized, this boy wasn't just defending himself. He was forcing everyone to rethink justice itself. The courtroom grew heavier with silence, the kind that demanded reflection. Judge Whitmore tightened her grip on the gavel, though she hesitated to bring it down. Her instincts told her to reassert control, yet her conscience whispered that something extraordinary was unfolding. "Mr. Carter," she began slowly, "you speak with conviction, but passion doesn't substitute for legal standing. Do you truly believe your defense is airtight?" "Yes, Your Honor," Darius replied firmly, "because the law is supposed to be clear. If it isn't, then justice becomes subjective, and justice shouldn't bend depending on who's standing before you." The words sliced through the courtroom like a blade. The gallery stirred, some nodding in quiet agreement. Even the stenographer paused momentarily, startled by the depth of the boy's reasoning. Judge Whitmore felt the flush of embarrassment rising beneath her robes. For years she had prided herself on her mastery of the bench, her authority rarely questioned. Now, before her, stood a boy dismantling the rigid walls of her courtroom with little more than knowledge and courage. She leaned forward. "Do you understand the weight of what you're saying? You are accusing this court of injustice." Darius's gaze did not falter. "I'm not accusing, Your Honor. I'm reminding, the Constitution wasn't written to protect the powerful, it was written to protect people like me." The audience gasped. Even Mr. Harlan shifted uneasily, realizing the tide of the room had turned. Whitmore's hands trembled slightly as she set the gavel aside. For the first time in years, she questioned not only her ruling but herself. Could it be possible that this boy, this black teenager dismissed as insignificant, understood the heart of the law better than she ever had? The thought unsettled her more than any argument she'd heard in her career. Judge Whitmore adjusted her glasses, masking the unease creeping through her. "Mr. Carter, if I allow this to continue, you must realize the precedent it sets. Children representing themselves, turning my courtroom into a place where truth matters more than procedure." Darius cut in, his voice sharp but respectful. The interruptions sent another ripple through the gallery. Court officers glanced at one another, half expecting the judge to explode. But instead, Whitmore sat frozen, staring at the boy who dared to challenge her. "Procedure is what keeps order," she said finally, her tone lower, almost defensive. Darius nodded. "And justice is what keeps order fair. Without it, procedure is just control dressed up in fancy words." Murmurs spread again. Someone in the back whispered, "The kid's brilliant." Mr. Harlan sprang to his feet, face red. "Your Honor, this is outrageous. He's twisting legal principles he barely grasps. This is why law requires formal training." But Darius didn't flinch. "Sir, training doesn't equal truth. If I've cited case law correctly, presented evidence clearly, and followed the Constitution, then isn't that the essence of law? Or do we only accept arguments when they come from people who can afford expensive schools?" The courtroom buzzed louder, the truth of his words striking deeper than any gavel could silence. Judge Whitmore's throat tightened. For years, she had dismissed defendants who lacked resources, brushing off their pleas as ignorance. But now, confronted with Darius's unshakable reasoning, she felt the mirror turned on herself. He wasn't just defending against trespass. He was exposing cracks in the very system she had spent decades upholding. Her gavel sat untouched. For the first time, Judge Whitmore wondered whether slamming it down would silence truth or bury it. By now, the courtroom felt less like a trial and more like a reckoning. The gallery leaned forward, eyes locked on the young boy who refused to bow. Even the bailiff, usually stone-faced, seemed captivated. Judge Whitmore inhaled deeply, trying to compose herself. "Mr. Carter, your argument challenges more than this case. You're questioning the very integrity of this court." Darius didn't hesitate. "Not the court, Your Honor, the people running it. The law is strong, but people weaken it when they forget who it's supposed to serve." The words stung. Whitmore's hand twitched near the gavel, but she didn't strike. From the back of the room, an older woman stood up. "The boy's right," she called out, her voice trembling but firm. "My grandson was locked up for months over a ticket he couldn't afford. No lawyer, no chance." A murmur of agreement swept through the crowd. Another man added, "Yeah, the system's broken for people like us. This kid's just saying what we all know." Mr. Harlan shot up angrily. "Your Honor, this has turned into a circus. I demand you silence the gallery before this gets out of hand." But Whitmore hesitated. For the first time in her career, she wasn't sure if silencing them would uphold order or suppress truth. Darius turned slightly, addressing the room without fear. "Justice isn't supposed to be comfortable. If the people feel voiceless, then this isn't a courtroom, it's a stage." The gallery erupted in applause before the bailiff managed to calm them. Whitmore's pulse quickened, her authority slipping further. She studied the boy in silence, her chest tight with an unfamiliar feeling, doubt. The crowd saw him as a voice of justice, and deep down, she feared they were right. The courtroom settled again, though tension lingered in the air. Judge Whitmore fixed her gaze on Darius, her voice measured but tinged with unease. Mr. Carter, you've stirred this room. But courts run on evidence, not speeches. Present your closing argument. Darius nodded, lifting his final sheet of notes. His voice was calm, steady, carrying the weight of someone far older than his years. Your Honor, the prosecution says I trespassed, but trespass requires proof I knowingly entered private property. This land is public commons. The fence was erected without due process, and the city council never approved it. That makes the ordinance unenforceable. He held up his photographs again. Here's proof the fence appeared only months ago. And here, he pointed to highlighted council minutes, is proof no legal authorization exists. Without authorization, the fence is illegal. Without legal restriction, my presence cannot be criminal. Judge Whitmore scanned the papers, her chest tightening. Each piece of evidence matched his words. Nothing sloppy, nothing imagined. Darius's voice grew stronger. Your Honor, I am not asking for special treatment. I am asking for equal treatment. The law is not supposed to bend for the wealthy or break for the poor. If you dismiss my plea, you dismiss the very principle you swore to protect. The gallery erupted again, cheers mixing with gasps. Even court officers looked uneasy, silencing the crowd. Whitmore's knuckles whitened around her pen. For years she had wielded authority like a shield, but now, standing before her was undeniable truth, from the lips of a boy everyone underestimated. Her own words from earlier echoed in her mind. Knowledge doesn't erase responsibility. But now she wondered, was she the one who bore the greater responsibility? Judge Whitmore sat in silence, her eyes fixed on the papers in front of her. She tried to steady her breathing, but Darius's words weighed heavier than any legal text she'd ever studied. The gallery buzzed with restless energy, waiting for her response. Finally she spoke, her voice low. Mr. Carter, do you know what you've done here today? Darius straightened. I've defended myself, Your Honor, just like the law allows. No, Whitmore said, shaking her head slowly. You've done more than that. You've held a mirror to this courtroom. To me, the admission shocked everyone. Even Mr. Harlan looked up, startled. The judge rarely revealed anything beyond her rigid authority. When I was your age, she continued, I believed in the law as a beacon of fairness, but years on this bench hardened me. I stopped seeing faces, started seeing only cases. Procedure replaced principle. She paused, eyes narrowing slightly. And yet, here you are, reminding me of the very reason this system exists. The gallery was silent now, hanging on her every word. Darius swallowed, unsure how to respond. Your Honor, I only wanted justice. Whitmore nodded. And you forced me to remember what justice looks like. Her gavel rested on the bench, untouched. This case challenges more than your actions. It challenges mine. I must review the evidence, study your arguments carefully, and decide if the law supports your claim. But know this, Mr. Carter. Today you've proven something remarkable. You've proven that knowledge and courage can break through even the heaviest doors of power. Darius's chest swelled, though his face remained calm. For the first time, Judge Whitmore's eyes softened, and in that quiet moment, the balance of the courtroom shifted, not from authority, but from truth. The silence in the courtroom stretched until Mr. Harlan abruptly stood, his voice sharp with frustration. Your Honor, this boy is manipulating emotion. He's turned your courtroom into a stage. We can't let sentiment outweigh the law. Judge Whitmore raised an eyebrow. And yet, Mr. Harlan, his citations and evidence align with established precedent. Are you suggesting the law itself is sentiment? The prosecutor flushed, caught off guard. No, of course not, but he's cherry-picking cases without understanding the broader framework. Darius calmly stepped forward. Would you like me to cite Illinois v. Wardlow or City of Ladue v. Gileo? Both demonstrate how local governments overstep their boundaries when restricting public rights. The gallery broke into murmurs again. Mr. Harlan's face reddened further, sweat dotting his brow. He shuffled his papers, searching for something, anything to use against the boy. Your Honor, he barked, the defendant is not a licensed attorney. Allowing this undermines the dignity of the court. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. What undermines dignity is dismissing truth because of the mouth it comes from. Her words echoed through the chamber, silencing even the gallery. Darius turned toward Harlan, his voice steady. The law is not owned by lawyers. It belongs to the people. You fear me not because I'm wrong, but because I've shown that even a boy can understand it." The crowd erupted in applause before the bailiff restored order. Whitmore pressed her hands together, her expression unreadable. Deep down, she knew the prosecutor's desperation only highlighted the boy's strength. For the first time in years, she realized this trial wasn't about trespass. It was about whether justice still lived inside those courtroom walls. And she wasn't sure she had the courage to answer. Judge Whitmore leaned back in her chair, the weight of the courtroom pressing down on her. For hours, Darius had laid out argument after argument, each more precise than the last. Her fingers drummed nervously on the gavel. She had dismissed him at first, called him a child, an amateur, but now the truth was undeniable. She looked at him directly. "Mr. Carter, you've challenged not only the prosecution but me as well. I cannot ignore the depth of your understanding. The law isn't supposed to be wielded as a weapon of power. It is meant to serve justice." "You've reminded me of that." Darius's eyes widened slightly, though he remained composed. "Your Honor, I only wanted the law to protect what is right." Whitmore nodded slowly. "And in doing so, you forced me to confront my own biases. Too often, I've judged cases not on their merits, but on appearances. Today, I see that knowledge, preparation and courage can come from the most unexpected places." Mr. Harlan shifted uneasily, muttering under his breath, but Whitmore ignored him. She turned her gaze back to Darius. "You've proven beyond doubt that the ordinance is unenforceable, and that your presence on public land does not constitute trespass. I see now that dismissing your plea would have been an injustice." The room remained silent, the weight of her words settling on everyone present. Darius's chest rose and fell slowly, absorbing the moment. Whitmore raised her gavel, but this time not to strike it down in dismissal. Instead, she let it rest lightly on the bench. "Case 1842 is hereby dismissed. The defendant's argument is valid, and the law supports him. Let this serve as a reminder that justice is not about age, status, or privilege. It is about truth." Applause erupted in the gallery, but Whitmore didn't flinch. She had learned something that day. Wisdom and fairness do not always reside in the most powerful. Sometimes they stand in front of you, small and determined, demanding to be heard. The sound of applause still echoed as Darius gathered his papers, his composure steady despite the whirlwind around him. The courtroom had changed, though not because of him alone, because truth had pierced the walls of authority and pride. Judge Whitmore remained seated, watching him closely. She felt an unfamiliar mix of humility and admiration. For the first time, she realized that the law wasn't just a set of rules to enforce. It was a living system meant to protect those who understood it, no matter their age or background. The prosecutor, Mr. Harlan, stood silently, frustrated but unable to argue. Darius's meticulous research and calm reasoning had left him with no rebuttal. Even he had to acknowledge the boy's brilliance. A woman from the gallery approached, leaning toward Judge Whitmore. "Your Honor, that boy just reminded all of us that justice isn't a privilege, it's a right." Whitmore nodded slowly. "Yes," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. She glanced at Darius, who was organizing his papers with quiet dignity. And sometimes, it takes someone brave enough to stand up, even when the world doubts them, to remind us of that truth. The bailiff opened the courtroom doors, and the crowd began to exit, whispering about the remarkable events they had witnessed. People were inspired, some even teary-eyed, as if justice itself had been renewed before them. Darius paused by the judge's bench, giving a respectful nod. "Thank you, Your Honor." Whitmore returned the nod, a rare smile touching her lips. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. You've done more than defend yourself today. You've reminded us all of what the law is supposed to be." As he walked out of the courthouse, heads turned. A young black boy had just changed minds, challenged authority, and stood firmly for justice. And Judge Whitmore, for the first time in years, wondered how many other voices like his had been ignored simply because of age, color, or circumstance. The courthouse was nearly empty now, the echoes of the day's events lingering like a whisper. Outside, sunlight fell across the steps, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch into the future. Darius walked slowly, savoring the quiet aftermath. He had won not just his case, but a measure of respect that many adults never earned in a lifetime. Judge Whitmore remained at her bench, alone for a moment, reflecting. She thought of every case where she had dismissed the voices of the marginalized, every instance when she had relied on assumptions instead of evidence. Today, a boy had reminded her of the true purpose of her oath, to uphold justice, no matter who stood before her. She picked up her pen and began to make notes, not for a ruling, but for herself. Listen, question, understand. Never let authority blind you to truth. Darius paused on the steps, turning back for a final look at the courthouse. He thought of all the students like him, overlooked and underestimated, and felt a quiet determination settle over him. Knowledge, courage, and persistence could move mountains, or at least change the course of a courtroom. Word of the case spread quickly. Local papers ran headlines about the black boy who out-argued a seasoned judge. Social media buzzed with admiration. Legal scholars debated his points. For many, the story was a wake-up call. The law belongs to those who study it, respect it, and use it to protect the powerless. Weeks later, Judge Whitmore called her clerks together. "Prepare a lecture for the new judges," she said. "We need to ensure they understand something critical. Age, race, or wealth does not determine the value of a legal argument. Today taught me a lesson I will never forget." As Darius returned to his neighborhood, he smiled, not out of pride, but of purpose. He had started as a boy seeking justice for himself. Now, he carried a spark that could inspire a generation to challenge authority respectfully, knowledgeably, and courageously. And in that spark lay a promise that justice, when wielded by the brave and informed, could never be silenced.